No, we're recording.
We're recording.
And we were just now discussing guest schedules. Because we
know.
still haven't recorded with guests this season yet.
Yeah, well, we're gonna probably have released episodes with guests before this episode.
Yeah.
We know who those guests are gonna be, we just haven't recorded with them yet. And so, yeah, I'm very, very excited for the guests episodes we're gonna have this season. This is a weird kind of time, is weird in this way of like, we are talking about the future, but it will have been the past in the future. I mean, obviously it's always going to be the past in the future, but like,
Yeah.
There is one thing, there is one overlap. This is not related to the guests, but related to like the release that we've watched these films in, is that because we're recording a lot of, the season, we're front loading a lot of this recording. It'll be many weeks between this episode and the first episode when the season's coming out. But in my brain, I'm still thinking, sometimes when watching stuff, I'll be thinking about the Brady Bunch movie still. And there was a parallel between the Brady Bunch and the film we're discussing today. Do you know what I'm referring to? You look very thoughtful.
I'm not entirely sure.
Both films had a character start to sing really well after being kissed.
Oh, yeah.
Both movies have a character who did not have a good voice, get kissed, and then start singing really well on stage.
With this movie, the character already had a good voice. She was just hiding it.
Well, we didn't know that until she started singing. But in my brain, I was watching that. I was like, oh my God, it's just the Brady Bunch movie again. And then, well, those parallels quickly fall apart the more you look at this. But
we're talking about 1956's The Girl Can Help It, starring the Jayne Mansfield. And I'm really excited to talk about her.
Yeah, because I really know nothing about her, but I'm now in love. And I also don't think you made it clear that this was a 50s film before I started watching it.
This is like the 50s film.
I know! And I'm really excited. I was like, ooh, oh yay, we get like fun colors and costumes again. I mean, obviously, a lot of these films have had fun colors and costumes, but like, it's not Technicolor, but it's, that colored film that has that.
It's
that
the
look
specific look from this specific time.
Yeah, I am really happy that we're returning to discuss camp in older films and more kind of classic Hollywood films, because we did a bit of that with Written on the Wind, but
our first ever episode.
Yeah, and now we're back with this film. But please tell me about Jayne Mansfield. Wait, is that her name?
Yeah, Jayne Mansfield.
I know nothing except she has the fucking, what a body.
Yeah.
Can I say that? I mean, she's like meant to be, she's incredibly sexualized in this film, and I like women, so she's beautiful.
Yeah, I also really want to talk about John Waters' thoughts on this movie, because there's an entire 20-minute video of him talking about this movie interspersed with various clips, and I took notes, and I just love how he talks about this movie. But one of the general background of the movie things that is very clear when you know it is that the director, his name, I always forget his name. Oh yeah, Frank Tashlin's, a lot of his work originates in animation,
Oh.
which you can see it in the film, like the way that the characters move and the colors and the general composition.
Well, and
It looks a
also,
lot like classic animation, and I know a lot of reviewers have compared it to Tex Avery cartoons.
I mean, there's this one sequence which to me I was like, oh, I mean, it's such like an incredible camp display of sexuality, the one where she's walking down the sidewalk. And
Oh yeah.
in my brain I was just like, oh yeah, this is like really like extreme, like kind of absurdist humor, but also just like this over the top sexuality that just reads as being very fun and very camp. But now that you say that he worked in animation, I'm like, oh my god, that is such like the like humor of that. It's such a visually, it's a very visual humor sequence.
Yeah, like she walks by this like ice truck, an entire block of ice immediately melts.
Yeah,
And
and the
then she
milkman,
walks by a milkman and the milk just pops, which
it's
like
boiling.
how did this how did the censors let that happen
I don't know.
in
I
the
mean, the guy's glasses break. Like it is
Yeah.
so. I mean, but that's like it makes sense that that guy got his start in animation because it reads like a cartoon, absolutely, and that kind of humor.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of camp, especially classical camp, in just like this general era of filmmaking, a lot of camp is just good uncanny valley.
Oh, that's it. I mean, speaking of Uncanny Valley, I know we should get to describing the plot at some point soon, but my favorite sequence in the film is really strange in a way that reads as kind of sad and romantic, but also really creepy. With when Miller is listening to the Julie London record and he
Oh
keeps
yeah.
seeing her. So Uncanny Valley is a great choice of words because, yeah, it's like it's off-putting and unnatural.
But it's also so pretty and so fun, which
Yeah,
isn't how the uncanny valley usually works. It's usually just
yeah.
off-putting.
I wonder if we this is a tangent that maybe you'll cut out when you edit this episode, but it's just now occurring to me um like speaking of Uncanny Valley and stuff, I've been seeing a lot of clips on Twitter recently talking about Top Secret, which I've never seen, but like
What is
there's a
that?
lot of like well, it's like a film that has a lot of like visual strange humor in it. There's like the
Oh,
Swedish
is that the
bookshop scene.
one? Is that the one with like the turtle scene that they filmed on 9/11? The
Huh?
Turtle Club. I think that's the movie.
I think it's an 80s film, so I don't know why it's 9/11.
Anyways,
Here, I let me find the anyway, I'm just like suddenly like maybe that's something
if
that we should
anyone knows what I'm
uh
talking about,
I have no idea what you're talking about. Well, okay,
this episode's already gonna need a lot of editing.
I know. So I just sent you on Twitter the clips that I was seeing on talked about on Twitter. Top Secret is a
Oh, yeah.
1984 film.
That's not the movie I'm referring to, but people will
Yeah.
know. People will know what I'm talking about, even though I currently can't find it.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
anyways,
Anyway, so okay, ignore all of that. Editing Fabiola, if you want to keep in the bit where you're talking about a turtle on 9/11, you can do that. But I don't know what you're talking
I'm so
about.
daunted by the editing process.
You can do it. I'll literally, I can walk you through. I can write up a little like my how I edit usually if you want.
Yeah.
I can give you my notes. But
Anyways.
Okay. So, plot of this film? Should we go over the plot of this film?
Yes. It's basically about this agent management industry guy named Tom who is tasked by this former-ish mobster into making his girlfriend-ish person, Jerry Jordan, a star.
Yeah.
And Tom kind of falls in love with her in the process, and a lot of it is about the contemporary music business, and there's a lot of now classic artists and songs in this movie. It's kind of
Oh,
a musical.
I mean, Wikipedia said it's a jukebox
Yeah.
musical, which makes sense because there's also it's part of the plot of how music gets distributed in this film of this era is jukeboxes.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's really, to me, the film has kind of, so when as I was watching this film, I was like, the commentary, to me, the clear like line and kind of the point of the satire and comedy of this film is about kind of expectations of women and like kind of the clash of like sexuality and societal like expectations of being like a housewife and a mother. But then Wikipedia also said that it like is was also a satire about the music industry.
Yeah, to me it felt like it was mostly about the music industry and how it operates, particularly in the 50s.
Yeah, I guess it is definitely both, but to me I was kind of like, I don't really know how
Yeah, they're still definitely going along with Jayne's character, Jerry.
Yeah, but I guess for me, I was like, whenever there was a music scene, I was just like listening to the music, and I was just into that. I was like, yeah, this is really fun, and these are all these really talented musicians. So, I mean, I guess the commentary is also just about like how they make her famous. But to me, I was like, I, I don't know enough about the era and like female rock stars or musicians and stuff at the time to know whether that was accurate or not. To me, it felt kind of just like, oh, there's this little story going on about how do we make this sex icon a famous singer, and then also we also get to see music at the same time, and that's kind of like those two things didn't, I guess, always feel necessarily related. It felt like a lot of the set pieces of them going to clubs was like kind of like, oh, it's an excuse to show off like some fun music.
Yeah, the movie's definitely invested in showing you and entertaining you with music and these
Mm-hmm.
legendary artists. But
Yeah. I mean, the title itself is based on the song, right?
yeah, by Little Richard.
Yeah.
There's
I was like,
multiple songs in this movie.
yeah. So, okay. So the main character is played, well, the female character,
Main to
um
me.
yeah, Jerry Jordan, whose real name is Georgiana, and Tom Miller. I have him down as Miller in all my notes because that's how she
Yeah.
refers to him, Mr. Miller. He calls her Georgie because that's what she wants to be called, and not Jerry. But that's Jayne Mansfield. Tell me
Yes.
more about her, because yeah.
So she's so iconic to me. I have a bunch of screenshots. I feel like a decent bulk of this episode will just be about her and also John Waters' thoughts on this movie.
Well, I've got some stuff to say. I have also some thoughts of my own thoughts too. So don't let John Waters take over the
Yeah.
episode.
Yeah, so basically what I find really interesting about one of the various things I find really interesting about Jayne is how deliberate she was in publicity and publicity stunts and being a star,
Mm.
which I feel very much contrasts the overall story of her contemporaries that were very much about not being super publicized and how the publicity didn't take them seriously as actors. Meanwhile, John Waters said she had an 8 hour a day open bar at her Pink Palace, open for publicity and reporters and photographers.
So she kind of managed her own publicity.
Yeah, a lot of her career was essentially publicity of herself.
Oh. So what had she starred in stuff before this film?
Yes, this was her first starring role, but she had various other supporting roles, and then she went on to do Broadway.
Mm.
Yeah, so one of the quotes from her is one of the two stardom quotes of hers are, the real stars are not good actors or actresses, they're personalities. And
Mm.
in this article for Little White Lies, it says her unwavering confidence is what initially got her an interview with Paramount's talent chief Milt Lewis by ringing up the studio and proclaiming, I'm Jayne Mansfield and I want to be a star.
Oh.
And I feel like everyone knows that the photo of her and Sophia Loren, where Sophia's just staring down her chest.
Oh.
Yeah.
You described that and I'm like, oh, I think I do know that photo.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of people don't know about Jayne Mansfield, but they know the photo. Basically,
Yeah.
that was fully orchestrated by her.
That historical context totally enhances my understanding of this film, because
Yeah.
she's playing a character that's almost like the opposite of herself in some way.
Yeah. But it's also still very much herself in the way that she performs the character.
Yeah, well, so because Jerry doesn't really want to be a star.
No.
She wants to be a housewife and a mother.
Because she knows that being a star will benefit the mobster boyfriend, and she kind of wants out of that relationship. So she tries her hardest to not be a good singer and to not be super cooperative.
Yeah, but also I think she's honest when she says she wants to be a housewife, and she wants
Yeah.
to be a mother, and like she takes a lot of joy in that.
And
She, like,
there's this implicit sense that you can't be a star and a mother.
yeah,
One needs to pick one or the other.
and also it's really interesting to me that she talks about, how everyone doesn't think she's gonna be a good mother, and everyone just assumes that she's like this sexual being. And I think she even said, there's like a quote where that I wrote down, where she's like,
And Jayne herself was a mother. A lot of
oh,
people know one of her kids. It's Mariska Hargitay. I don't know if I'm saying her name right, from SVU.
oh,
She's the SVU lady. That's Jayne Mansfield's daughter.
huh. But so I don't know. I think it's really interesting that, like, she's the actress Jayne is definitely performing sexuality in the way that she walks and the way she holds herself throughout the film.
And the costuming itself enhances it.
Yeah.
They were designed by Charles Lemaire, and he added tassels and padding and gave her like the pointy cone bras. So
Oh yeah, her proportions are like ridiculous.
yeah.
It's cartoony.
Yeah. It also very much adds to the image of her as a Marilyn Monroe type. She was very much like, in roles, she was very much regarded as a Marilyn Monroe type. She she was called the poor man's Marilyn Monroe.
Mm. But she doesn't. She's not necessarily. She's a blonde. She's a bleach blonde, but she's not necessarily like dumb and ditzy.
Yeah, and I feel like the comparison to Marilyn is really interesting by how different they are to me.
Mm. Say more
Like
on that.
how Jayne's publicity stunts were very deliberate and orchestrated. Meanwhile, it seems that Marilyn often avoided like big publicity and was trying really hard to be taken seriously as an actress.
Mm-hmm.
John Waters, I do agree that with him that like to us she's better than Marilyn. And he describes her as a parody of Monroe, an insane Marilyn Monroe.
Yeah.
Like she very much makes Marilyn look relatively normal.
Yeah.
In terms of the look and the proportions and the performance.
Agreed.
Because when I watch Marilyn performances, I see someone who's genuinely trying to give a good and funny performance and is just trying her best to be taken seriously. Meanwhile, I watch
Which
Jayne
there's
Mansfield.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, but I watch a Jayne Mansfield performance and I see that she's doing a bit.
Yeah.
I see that she knows that she's playing a Marilyn type.
Yeah, and also that like within this film, I think the character of Georgiana also knows that she's playing a bit.
Yeah.
I don't see anybody flipping or checking.
You will. Take your stole off and go to the powder room.
Powder room?
Just visit a while. But on the way there and back, walk by the reservation desk. That's where the owner hangs out. On your way.
Seems awfully silly, Mr. Miller.
Operation Powder Room in operation.
Yes, sir.
It's the whole kind of the way that Miller initially gets kind of Jerry to be famous is to just bring her to various clubs, like nightclubs, and just like have her walk to and from the bathroom to like get the owner's attention. And it's not like she's like, well, why would I do that? She's like, at first she's kind of like, oh, why are we doing this? And then she gets it instantly and is just plays along with it.
And the way she walks is also very cartoony, and
yeah,
like, it just reminded me of women in old cartoons.
Yeah. I mean, there is a kind of like innocence in the way she delivers some lines that are really funny. It's not like she's unaware of her sexuality. She's absolutely aware of her sexuality. And if anything, is just frustrated that that's just the first thing that people assume of her. Because the kind of the plot becomes that Tom Miller is absolutely falling in love with her. And Murdoch, the gangster, this is supposed to be his girlfriend. He's supposed to, she's supposed to become a star so that he can marry her and become famous again. And which, side note, I think also the ideas of like fame and kind of these like the male characters are also very interesting in kind of their relationship to like how their masculinity and image is associated with fame. But we could get to that later.
And also associated with specific women.
Yeah. Oh, that is so true. The men are absolutely like, because everyone knows. I mean, yeah, because Miller was the agent, but everyone associates him with his last star.
Julie London, played by actual star Julie London.
Yeah. Which, okay, is any of, like, I also don't really know her. Is any of the stuff that they kind of say about her, like, not, she also didn't want to be a star and then became famous, is any of that true? Or is
that
it just,
I'm
like...
not sure. I just know that Julie London was an actual singer and they are using her actual name.
Yeah, well, I'm assuming she
like,
did she actually act name. Too?
Yeah, that's her in the scene.
Yeah, because I mean, she's incredible. She's in one
Yeah.
scene and is so like commanding. But what I was gonna say is that, you know, the plot goes is that Murdoch is suspicious that they're falling in love and together, and they are, but also his kind of assistant slash other former gangster Mousy kind of helps try to cover it up to make it seem like they're not getting together. There's this scene where that I find really interesting where, God, the plot is so complicated. Basically, Miller's trying to get their record on the jukeboxes, but the guy who owns all the jukeboxes was also a former gangster that has beef with Murdoch.
Yeah.
And he like, you know, beats Tom Miller up, and then there's this scene where then Jerry's like taking care of him in her bed, and like Murdoch comes in and is like so upset because he thinks that they're like having an affair. And she's like, you have such a dirty mind. No, like that's not what I'm doing. I'm just taking care of him. And I don't know, I just find it really that like dynamic
striped
really interesting.
pajamas.
So funny.
Bright red striped pajamas.
Well, and then she's like pulling out every single pair of pajamas that she's bought for her family members. She has like 7 brothers and her dad. I don't know, to me that just, it feels like a very like nuanced and complicated like female character, in the sense that like I can't really think of many other characters, especially from the 50s, who are women, who are sexual beings, who are confident in their sexuality, but also do not want and enjoy being sexual, but do not want to be defined by that sexuality.
Yeah.
But also, to me, her dreams of being a housewife and the way she's always cooking and stuff, and like the final scene where like
It's
they bring
also
out
very
all of these
loaded.
children. Well, it's that, to me, is also, that is being parodied. That is absolutely, they're kind of like a little bit poking fun at that a little bit too, where it's like, oh yeah, you just want to be a little housewife and you want to have all of the kids who are blonde and blue-eyed, and, you know, the little stroller that they push out at the very end. It's so, I mean, if one of the things that we talk about with camp is artifice and theatricality and it all just being a performance, that's baked into the literal structure of the film, because we get the film introduced and like closed by the main character, or the actor and the main character.
Yeah, it also plays into the artifice of the 50s as a whole. That entire decade was about these structures, basically.
Yeah. Well, I love the opening because he literally expands the aspect ratio, and then he's like, and it's for, you know, it's first it's like, you know, a little square and it's in black and white, and then he's like doing like kind of like the opening credits and listing like, oh, you know, color by, I can't remember who the color is by, but he's, yeah, color by deluxe, and he like says it, and he's like color by deluxe, and then it comes, you know, becomes brightly colored, and
it looks so pretty.
So
John
pretty.
Waters says in the video that he has tried so hard to recreate the look of deluxe, but he hasn't been able to.
Yeah, I mean, there's something about like the specific studio's coloring process that if it's a chemical formula,
yeah,
that's finicky. It's not digital that you could just copy and paste it over.
It's the chemical formula plus the materials and colors of the costuming in the set. Like it's so many factors.
Yeah, you're being very much made aware of how the film is constructed from the very beginning.
Do you want to know more about Mansfield? I have a lot more about Mansfield.
Oh yes, please.
So there's this Hollywood Reporter article titled "Jayne Mansfield, the first reality star?" ?
Ooh.
And it says, in addition to managing motherhood, the melange of pets, and a full-time show schedule, she orchestrated 3 to 5 personal appearances, photo shoots, interviews, and endorsements per day.
Damn.
And she also had this water bottle line that is just her in a black bikini in water bottle form, and there's a photo of her in her heart-shaped pool in the Pink Palace of her with all the water bottles around her.
So wait, the water bottle is shaped like her?
Yes. There's a video
That's
of the
amazing.
drag queen Jayne Mansfield doing a makeover on one of the water bottles.
Oh.
And another section says, it was typical of Mansfield to tell reporters, I'm through with cheesecake, before crossing a busy intersection in a leopard print bikini, causing a 3-car pileup. I'm done with publicity, she alerted the press at a Catholic funeral service held for her pet chihuahua, Galena.
Oh. This woman knew how to... Knew? She passed? She's still alive?
I have stories. There are like stories of her passing, which I feel like also contrasts with the Monroe comparison as well.
Well, I was just gonna say that she knew how to command attention, huh?
Yeah. Like, again, it really contrasts with Monroe in the sense that basically all of Jayne Mansfield's image, like the image of her, was very deliberate.
And that she had control over.
Yes.
That's kind of like, I don't know. I feel like it's that these stories are very much challenging the ideas about the agency that women had in the 50s.
Yeah. More specifically, actors. I do feel she's a massive exception because most of the actors at the time were managed by the studio, and the image was studio mandated.
Yeah.
And so she died in a car crash in 1967, and prior to that, there's this Interview magazine article about the documentary Mansfield 66, 67, which is specifically about her last year of her life. And it focuses a lot on her connection-ish to Anton LaVey and the Church of Satan.
Satan?
Like the Church of Satan, which it technically doesn't really believe in Satan. It's more of like a marketing thing.
Oh,
And
okay.
there's a photo of him and her in her house, and he has this devil costume, and it says like the Anton LaVey Church of Satan aesthetic was very much inspired by horror films of the time and the Munsters.
Ooh.
So then so you know how the Marilyn Monroe death has like CIA assassination conspiracies. Well, Jayne Mansfield's death has Satanist curse conspiracies.
Okay.
So like apparently people thought that Anton put a curse on her, and the director Kenneth Anger, who was an occultist and he knew Anton LaVey, and like one of his quotes was, Anton is not powerful enough to do that.
Oh my goodness.
and like the other thing that was rumored about her death is that she got decapitated in the crash. She did not get decapitated.
Well,
but like these death stories about her are just feel like a really extreme version of the Monroe death stories, which just add to her being the parody of Monroe and an insane version of Monroe thing about her.
So, damn. I mean, it is like, I guess it does feel a little bit, it feels very easily, something that can easily be ripe for conspiracy theories if she was really into doing publicity stunts and then she dies in a car crash. Like, I can see how people could be, theorizing if it was real or not, or what happened and what the details were. But sometimes I guess there's car crashes and it's really sad.
Yeah, this was pre-seat belts.
Wait, oh, seatbelts didn't exist. Why did I never realize that? I mean, that should be so obvious.
Started to become a thing in the 80s.
Oh my god. I am trying to think of more things to say about her / say about Georgie. I don't know. It's she's like, what do you call her character in this film? She's kind of, I guess I'll call her Georgie because that's what she wanted to be called. I do think one of the iconic moments that I hope, I always think of like little screenshots you could post on our social media when watching a film to promote it, is when they stop to have a picnic at the beach.
Oh yeah.
And she goes to change, to undress, and take off her skirt to reveal a bathing suit, but she does it by going behind a bush that is literally the tiniest, thinnest little shrub ever. Yeah. It does not hide her.
I was also gonna say I love her car. Speaking of cars.
Oh yeah, it's like a kind of like a cherry red.
It's cherry red and it has this very 50s design. It just looks very gaudy and feels like the extreme of the 50s. Like that's how I would describe the look of this movie. It's 50s to its extreme.
Yeah, I mean, also like all of the rock and roll that you have in this film is just like so 50s. Also,
and John Waters has some really good insights and really good observations regarding the rock and roll of the film. He talks about how the vast majority of the rock stars in this movie are genuine rockabillys, like, and they would not usually be performing in venues as nice as they are in this movie. And
good point.
So there's this big dissonance between just their appearance and their manner of performance with just these very sleek venues, basically, and how he describes it as the contrast is almost freakish.
I do like the way the music is introduced in this film, where we've got this little intro where the actor who plays Joe Miller is kind of talking about the color and all of that, and he has this line, what is it, he's like talking about how the music in this film, he says like, oh, this is a musical, and the music in this film represents the culture and refinement and the polite society of current culture. And as he says that, he turns on the jukebox and it completely drowns him out.
And also the jukebox itself as an item is really interesting to me, as not just the symbol of the 50s as we know it today, but it's also like this thing that's everywhere. It's in so many retro inspired restaurants, and there's something kind of tacky about it.
Yeah. Well, and it's also like the artifice of it too, where it's not like they show
this little colorful machine that plays music.
Yeah, and like you see many scenes where they go and actually see the performers in these clubs, and that is, it's shined up and polished and it's all that kind of fake too, but also like you're not actually listening to the performers when you're listening to the jukebox. You're listening to like a little tinny little version of them, but it is so fun at the same time. Like I love going to an old school diner and putting a quarter in to select a song.
Yeah, the old schoolness of this movie is very camp. And also like when speaking about the portrayal of the rock stars in this movie, he singles out the scene where that band is rehearsing in that building, and he's like, John Waters basically talks about how these people were not very glamorous. Like these faces were not present in movies in the 50s, and he also singles out this one shot in that scene of this one guy in the corner kind of chewing gum, and he says, "Oh, I bet someone in the studio was like have that man on screen as little as possible."
Yeah. I mean, that is interesting, this idea that like one of the reasons that Jerry Jordan, becomes this star is it's not really even about like her talent at all. It's just about her looks, and this idea of like the kind of you get a story.
Also, not really her looks, but also the specific thing that she can do with her voice and in that one song that they record her in.
For rocks, rock pile dust is on my shoes. I'm a guy just born to lose. When I hear the siren blow, I get those blues.
Oh yeah, that is true. I don't know. I was gonna comment on, I guess, on the kind of this like juxtaposition between the Hollywood glam and the kind of telling the story all about having this gorgeous star with this unique talent, while at the same time they have just all of these rock stars with just playing their music, and it feels to me almost like,
and sometimes even like their regular clothes.
Yeah, and to put those in conversation with each other, to me, feels almost a little like saying, like, I guess one is genuine appeal, the rock stars, and one is kind of manufactured, like, fame.
Yeah.
And
also like that's aesthetically also manufactured as well.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's interesting to say about also like the end of the film and the arc that the Fats Murdoch goes through, which is also, I mean, I don't want to touch too much on like the film's handling of body image, because it is, has some 50s and fat phobia and just like grossness.
This movie was made in the 50s.
Yeah. But it is also interesting that like something that is part of his character development is his kind of he used to be Slim Murdoch and now he's Fats Murdoch, and like that his agency and the way he presented himself was taken away from him, and he's trying to like kind of reassert his fame also after he went to prison by having this famous, sexy, beautiful star to marry. And it's then interesting that like the film concludes with it kind of being like, oh, he's got actual talent, he's got he wrote all these songs in prison, and that's what is like was being performed and got popular, and they decide to the jukebox gangsters who are gonna try to shoot him decide to actually sign him after all, because everyone's in love with him. I don't know, I think that's kind of a funny little way that the story comes full circle, where he ends up not needing the artifice and manufactured aesthetic beauty. What gets him famous is just his talent.
Yeah, but it also kind of relates to this historical context that John Waters brings in when talking about this movie, which he's like, you don't understand, all of these rock stars were perceived as scary to most people. Like the sound was scary and the way they sang is scary. Like this is a very new and contemporaneous movie, which the perception of these artists, especially when they're being put in these very fancy Hollywood sets, is, to me, it's a big part of the camp of this movie. Like because the juxtaposition of those things.
Is it a way to try to kind of like make them more appealing and make them more like palatable to a public audience?
Kind of. I feel what I read it as is, I do think the director has a genuine appreciation for pop culture and like the contemporaneous pop culture, while also kind of satirizing it.
Yeah.
And I feel like that context is, it shows if you know it in various scenes, like in the scene where Murdoch is like, go to the TV and we're seeing this, to us modern audiences, like a regular 50s rock performance, but to the contemporaneous audience, this is a completely new and potentially scary sound. And like immediately after that scene, they're talking about how the singer in that performance, oh, he's not trained and he like sounds bad, therefore it doesn't matter that Jerry sounds bad because she has a unique sound.
Yeah.
And also I feel like it also contributes to Murdoch's ending, because I don't think that the movie and the audience necessarily thinks that he's a good performer. I think it just thinks he has a unique sound that is popular at this current moment.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good reminder, because yeah, in my brain I'm just like, this is how this kind of music sounds. But
yeah, it very much adds to the camp of the film of how now it, and like the retroness of it, about how nowadays we don't have the same cultural context. And in the video, John Waters just reiterates and emphasizes like, you don't understand, this music and these people were scary.
I mean, does that have any, is that related to like class and racial dynamics as well?
Yes.
Since a lot of the performers are Black.
Yeah. Yes.
And also
have a specific way of dressing. Like with Little Richard, he wore makeup and there's this prettiness to him. And yes, the John Waters mustache is inspired by Little Richard. And like, again, those guys rehearsing in that studio, they're in pretty plain clothes, and their mannerisms, they're like, as John Waters describes in the video, like these are genuine like Southern rockers. They're not Hollywood per se.
So is one of the things that is camp is that to us, a modern audience, it becomes camp because the cultural context has changed, and we're kind of like, well, what are they talking about? Is that one of the arguments? Or is it camp in the sense that when it was made, it was like, this is not how they're typically represented?
It's
and so
both.
There's that.
I think it's both.
Yeah.
With it being both at the same time, it reminds me of one of the quotes I wrote down from John Waters' video. Is he says that Tashlin understood extreme taste and how beautiful bad taste could be. Like with the clashing of these various cultures at the time, but also just the various colors and textures in this movie. There's this scene near the end where Georgina's in the blue and purple gown, this like taffeta gown, but they're also behind her, there's like leopard print curtains and this vase of roses. And I just find that image so beautiful and so camp. And also then when she performs her beautiful singing, the orchestra behind her is all in stereotypical jail outfits, and I'm like, this is incredible.
Yeah. I don't know if this, since this isn't a visual moment, I don't know if this is kind of the same thing, but to me, like, something else that kind of is a moment of two different tones clashing that I definitely find humorous, if not camp, is the gorgeous, kind of seemingly innocent Georgina making a dark joke, like her commentary about when they go to visit Murdoch's like old, like his palace used to be his casino or something, and she's like, oh yeah, Miller's like, oh, did he grow up here? And she's just like innocently, it's like, oh no, he wasn't born here, most of his best friends were killed there though.
That's at the beach in her yellow swimsuit.
He has a place out here, too?
The place used to be the gambling casino. He likes it there because of the memories.
The old ancestral home, huh?
Oh, no. Mr. Murdoch wasn't born there, but most of his best friends were killed there. Oh, you know, the police used to raid it and everything. Oh, don't worry. Mr. Murdoch put new carpets in all over.
There's also the line where, because Miller is an alcoholic, which is kind of glossed over because they're just kind of like, oh, it's because girl problems. He's like hung up on Julie London, and then when he falls in love with Georgie, he like starts seeing her and whatever.
He's kind of like, oh no, not this again.
Well, then it's like, then his alcoholism never comes up, but okay, whatever, it's the 50s. That's what the joke's, that's a joke. But she also has that joke early on in the movie where she mentions how her father used to drink a lot. Her father drank to forget about her mother, and when Miller's like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know your mother was dead, and she's like, oh no, she wasn't, she isn't, that's just why he drank. I totally butchered that delivery, but
yeah, Georgina does have a lot of witty dialogue.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like, speaking of the mob antics, there's this scene / montage of the rival record producers or jukebox manufacturers. I don't quite remember the context of the montage, but
they're
it's
the
basically
guys that
a lot of
Murdoch hired basically to replace the jukeboxes.
The scene is basically a bunch of jukeboxes getting thrown out and destroyed, like,
yeah,
as if they were like contraband or slot machines or something. But no, they're jukeboxes that are now very much these symbols of the good old days, and they're in every retro family diner.
I mean, it's also just, to me, the fact that this like this character is a former gangster, and
they're kind of all former gangsters, and they're making jukeboxes.
That's so funny, and it's just the violence that they bring into this film, that it would feel out of place if the tone isn't satire.
Yeah, and it feels very pointed that everyone in the music industry has a gangster past.
Okay.
Do you have any favorite outfits or favorite songs even?
That's so hard. I love the dress that she wears for the final song.
Yeah.
You already described it, but I also like that the strap kind of have these flowers, like maybe they're silk flowers or something. For me, the outfits I remember more clearly are all the ones that Julie London wears in that weird, she's this weird ghost that is haunting Miller.
She's appearing in various places in his apartment, and every time she appears, she's wearing a different gown.
It's so fun. I love that so much.
And she's singing like Crimea River, beautiful song.
Yeah, but like the fact that they put her in a new gorgeous and newly specific outfit every single time she reappears. Opulence, In terms of favorite song, I don't know. Gosh, let me pull up what the list of songs were again. They were all really good. Ooh, I did like the performance of "Spread the Word" by Abby Lincoln.
Oh,
that was a good performance. And I love the Little Richard songs as well.
Yeah, my favorite Georgina outfits were her entrance outfits. Her entrance.
Oh, that entrance!
She appears like a curtain opens.
I can't believe we haven't talked about that yet, because that is such a good reveal. I was grinning Because yeah, like Joe Miller is going on about how, you know, oh, some girls aren't built for fame, you know, I don't want to break her heart or hurt her feelings by turning her down, so I should just go now. And now he's going on, the curtains pull back, and she's just, it's like,
it's a white dress, like and there's a shawl.
It's a gown. It's a gown.
All of the dresses here are arguably gowns.
Yeah. Oh, and yeah, I mean, he just like sees her and just like blue screens. He just completely stumbles over himself, and she's just standing there posing, smiling.
I also really like her red dress, which
that's what she wears to the clubs.
Yeah, it
right?
reminded me a lot of Jessica Rabbit, and I wouldn't be surprised if this was one of the inspirations for Jessica Rabbit.
I was thinking that too. I was absolutely thinking that too. Yeah.
Like she's very much a human cartoon. Like she literally has the Jessica Rabbit proportions.
There was a moment where I was like looking at her and I was like, she's got Lara Croft boobs. She's got cones.
The like original Lara Croft design.
Yeah. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about, right?
The
like
triangles.
Yeah.
Looks kind of Minecrafty.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Some of my
This is a fun film.
Yeah.
This is a very fun
Too
film.
bad it's currently only available either on DVD in the Criterion Collection or a pretty low quality rip on YouTube.
Yeah, that is the version that we watched, and I went back
to watch clips by themselves that are in a much better quality because I was like, I just need to see these colors and these textures.
Yeah.
So many sequin curtains. This is Sequin Curtains the movie, which John Waters did say that
to see this in theaters.
Female Trouble when the apartment is just red sequin curtains. That's very much inspired by this movie.
I mean, I can absolutely see the inspiration. It makes complete sense.
Yeah, and he also talks about how Divine was his Jayne Mansfield, but paired with Godzilla. He's like, Jayne Mansfield was the ultimate movie star to him.
Well, do you have any last quotes you want to leave us with?
One of the fun facts about this movie, because this movie is mostly known for its contributions to rock and roll, but not just with the amount of stars that appear in this movie, but also its influence. So the 20 Flight Rock song by Eddie Cochran, which is the one that's performed where Murdoch is like, go to the TV. So
yeah,
a young man named Paul McCartney auditioned for this other young man named John Lennon for a band using that song because he saw it in this movie.
Oh.
This movie is responsible for the Beatles.
That's crazy.
Movie's also pretty responsible for a lot of John Waters movies as well.
Yeah. I mean, that's culture right there. The Beatles and John Waters.
Like, yeah, there are direct lines from this movie to those two cultural standpoints.
I'm glad we got to talk about it.
Yeah. This movie's so fun and so 50s at its extreme, and it should be more accessible on streaming.
Well, is that it?
I love that we always go well.
It's Giving Camp, hosted by Saffron, Hefta-Gaub,
and Fabiola Liaño.
Our theme music is written by Harrison Lurie,
and the podcast is edited by Fabiola Liaño.
Follow us on Patreon. Support us on Patreon.
On Instagram, it's Giving Camp Pod, and on Twitter, it's Giving Camp Pod without the it's. We're on Patreon at It's Giving Camp Pod, and shout out to our patron, Nicole Venito.